by force, fraud and cohesion. So they were trying, the prosecution, to paint the picture of him being a violent man in order to show that Cassie Ventura in particular lived in fear of Sean Combs, that the threat of violence was enough to persuade her, to coerce her into going along with these sex marathons against her will. So that's why they were really dwelling on the idea of him being a violent man. That's why they were showing the video of him punching and hitting her in the corridor of that LA hotel room. That's why they called so many witnesses who detailed seeing him being physically abusive towards her. You know, they called a makeup artist who said he'd witnessed her being physically abusive. You know, they called witnesses who said that they'd seen her with a fat lip, witnesses who said that, yes, she'd had to spend days in a hotel room recovering from her injuries. So that's why they were seeking to portray him as a really violent man.
And Martha, we also heard throughout the trial from 35 witnesses across the whole trial, but we heard from a lot of personal assistants, didn't we, and employees, and it was clear that many people were involved in certainly facilitating this kind of lifestyle that he lived.
Yeah, definitely, but crucially, the jury didn't find him guilty on racketeering. So that means that, you know, they viewed this as being an ordinary celebrity entourage, you know, a network of bodyguards and personal assistants and other helpers, yes, but not a criminal enterprise. So they decided that they didn't help him cover up these alleged crimes. But yes, you know, we got a window into the way that, you know, these celebrities operate, into the way that Sean Combs had people at his beck and call, that he woke up assistants in the middle of the night to do his bidding, that he flew off the handle if, you know, they didn't do exactly what he said in the exact instance that he demanded it. You know, we saw a picture of Sean Combs as an incredibly unpleasant individual at times, but crucially, you know, not a criminal on those three most serious charges, so say this jury. We did, though, hear from one of his personal assistants who testified under the pseudonym Mia. She was very close to Sean Combs. She was his personal assistant for 8 years. She said that on occasion he had physically and sexually assaulted her a number of times. She said he'd forced her into oral sex and even raped her on one occasion. But Sean Combs was not standing trial for the physical or sexual abuse of Mia. She was a support witness, if you like, for the government. She was speaking to the racketeering charge, this idea that Combs created a culture of silence around him. But again, you know, the defence laughed off her claims. They really berated her on the stand, almost. You know, they said that she was motivated by money, that she'd just come out of the woodwork as a result of the civil lawsuits that are mounting up against Sean Combs. And that's something that we need to remember. While he has escaped guilty verdicts in the most serious criminal charges against him, there are still outstanding civil lawsuits against Sean Combs. So he presumably will still have to fight those, perhaps in court, perhaps out of court.
OK, Martha, thanks so much for that for now. So the breaking news, if you are just joining us here on Sky News, Sean Diddy Combs has been found guilty of 2 counts of transportation for prostitution, but cleared of the more serious charges, 2 of sex trafficking and 1 of racketeering conspiracy. And in the last few minutes, the judge has adjourned the court while he considers whether or not to free Sean Diddy Combs on bail after his conviction on those 2 lesser charges. Let's talk now to David Arenberg. He's a former state attorney for Palm Beach County, and he's able to join us now. Dave, good to talk to you today. What's your reaction to this verdict? What do you make of it?
I was shocked because I thought the evidence was really strong against Diddy. And the fact when the jury came back and was undecided on the racketeering count, I thought that meant he was found guilty on human trafficking, because it was much easier to prove human trafficking than prove racketeering. So why would you be undecided on the hardest count of all unless you were finding him guilty of the easier counts? But no, they found him not guilty on all 2 counts of human trafficking as well as racketeering, and only found him guilty of the weakest crimes, the Mann Act, which could still put him in prison, but it's not going to be anywhere close to the maximum, which is 10 years per count. So it would be 20 years.
So in terms of a prison sentence, the fact that this is the first time he's been up in front of a judge for this, realistically, what do you think the judge will be considering now, and what will he be looking at for this sentence?
Well, the judge heard all the evidence and probably thinks that this was a big victory for the defense, that Diddy got away with this, because the evidence was pretty clear in my mind. There was human trafficking. I mean, I'm shocked that they didn't believe it, at least in regards to Cassie. The jury even asked for her testimony to be reread back to them. And yet they apparently believe that the 2 victims, Cassie and Jane, consented, that they were willing participants the whole way through, never revoked their consent at any time. So I think the judge is going to see all that and probably give him a tougher sentence than a normal defendant. So if I had to guess, I would say he'll be sentenced to prison, perhaps up to 5 years. I don't anticipate he'll go much higher than that.
Wow, but that's still a sizable period inside. And he has, of course, been held on remand, as we would call it here, for a number of days. So realistically, he could be serving a handful of years in prison, you think?
Right. He'll get time served for the days he's already spent behind bars. So it could be a 2-year sentence, and then because he spent all his time behind bars, he'll walk free in months. Or it could be perhaps a 5-year sentence, and then that would result in real incarceration. He could give him up to 20 years, but the guidelines here, I think, are much lower as an offender without a lengthy criminal record. So we'll see. But this judge heard the evidence like the rest of us, and I'm sure this judge is just as surprised as the rest of us.
There are a number of civil lawsuits in the pipeline now as well. How will this verdict affect them?
The verdict will have little effect on the civil lawsuits. Now, what's interesting is that if Diddy was found guilty, that guilty verdict would have helped the civil lawsuits. But since he was acquitted, the civil lawsuits will go forward. They have a lower standard than the criminal cases, where criminal cases, you need to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. It's a high burden. For civil cases, you just need to show by a preponderance of the evidence that things happen. That's 50% plus 1. That's just more likely than not that it occurred. And I apologize for the dogs in the background, but they're as upset about this verdict as I am.
Do you think this verdict is going to cause pause before we see more celebrity trials of this nature? I mean, looking across the other side of the pond, the evidence, was pretty compelling on lots of different fronts. Just the fact that he is a celebrity, do you think that came into the jury's decision here?
It's hard for jurors to ignore the fact that Diddy is a wealthy, famous individual. And so for sure they knew that, and that had to factor in some way. Also, the jury was not sequestered. So the jury probably got some outside information they were not supposed to be privy to. So that's another issue here. But you can't retry him for these same crimes. Under our Constitution, you can't have what's called double jeopardy. So he goes free on all these crimes except for the prostitution counts, and he could still face some justice there. But I do think celebrity matters, and this is in a post-Me Too environment where it used to be that you believe women. Now it's a different environment where these accused sex offenders have been treated a little differently. Bill Cosby is free, for example, and now Diddy goes free.
And in terms of him going free, in inverted commas, the judge has adjourned the court while he considers whether or not to set him free on bail. The prosecution and defence have been asked to go away and think about sentencing and come back at 1 p.m. your time. I mean, could we see Diddy walking free this afternoon?
It's possible. And I perhaps misspoke when I said Diddy goes free, because this was a victory for Diddy. I mean, Diddy faced the rest of his life in prison and only was convicted on the most minor counts. So I keep thinking he gets acquitted entirely, but no, he did get convicted of those lesser counts. He could still stay behind bars. It'll be up to the judge, but the defense lawyers will surely say that you kept this guy behind bars because of the allegations of violence, of intimidating witnesses, of racketeering, human trafficking, not because of prostitution. So let him go home until he's sentenced. We'll see what the judge does.
What impact do you think this will have on his career?
The information that came out about him should damage him in the court of public opinion. Even though he was acquitted of the toughest counts, he's still a vile individual who forced women to do terrible things and committed force against them. I mean, that video can't
I'm just going to cut across you. Sorry, Dave. I do apologise. Just as we're talking to you, we're seeing a huge number of the family coming out of the court there. Let's just see if we can take it with a different camera. Goodness me, look at the scrum there as they're leaving the court and getting into this.
To do terrible things and committed force against them. I mean, that video can't
I'm just going to cut across you. Sorry, Dave.
The toughest of intimidating witnesses, of racketeering, human trafficking, not because of prostitution. So let him go home until he's sentenced. We'll see what the judge does.
What impact do you think this will have on his career?
The information that came out about him should damage him in the court of public opinion. Even though he was acquitted of the toughest counts, he's still a vile individual who forced women to do terrible things and committed force against them. I mean, that video can't
I'm just going to cut across you. Sorry, Dave. I do apologise. Just as we're talking to you, we're seeing a huge number of the family coming out of the court there. Let's just see if we can take it with a different camera. Goodness me, look at the scrum there as they're leaving the court and getting into this.
To do terrible things and committed force against them. I mean, that video can't
I'm just going to cut across you. Sorry, Dave. I do apologise. Just as we're talking to you, we're seeing a huge number of the family coming out of the court there. Let's just see if we can take it with a different camera. Goodness me, look at the scrum there as they're leaving the court and getting into this huge people carrier.
How are you feeling?
Rise it up! Rise it up! Next step, rise it up! Bad boy back! The rise of the bad boy! Sorry, coming through, man. Rise of the bad boy! All right. Ride him up, baby! All right, excuse me. Rise of the bad boy! All right. Ride him up, baby! All right, excuse me. Sorry, coming through, man. Rise it up! Rise it up! Next step, rise it up!
And getting into this huge people carrier.
How are you feeling?
Rise it up! Rise it up! Next step, rise it up! Bad boy back! The rise of the bad boy! Sorry, coming through, man. Rise of the bad boy! All right. Ride him up, baby! All right, excuse me.
How are you feeling?
Sorry. After the guilty verdicts. Sorry.
Oh, thank you.
The scene as the family left the court today.
I'll go around. So many freaking people.
And fans and detractors, people who have been gathering here.
How are you feeling?
On the sidewalk, please. Back up.
How are the family feeling about the verdict? How are the family feeling? How are the family feeling about the verdict?
Bless y'all. You ready, bro?
And it is courthouse May.
Well, chaotic scenes outside the court there, where Sean Diddy Combs has been found not guilty of sex trafficking. In the last few moments, we just saw there in that black vehicle in front of the cameras there, his family coming out, his mother, Janice, and 7 of his children, including his twins, Jesse, James and Delilah. I didn't hear any myself, but you may well have heard some bad language during that, and if so, we do apologise. We clearly are not in control of that. But the family have come out of the court and gone into this vehicle. Just a bit of movement there, sort of someone coming back out, maybe somebody else getting back in. You heard Martha Kellner down there shouting out to family members, how are the family feeling? No response, but certainly smiles as they came out of court. And we heard from Martha a short while ago that when they were in court, they were clapping, they were cheering, they were, along with the defence team, hugging themselves, hugging each other. And as for Sean Diddy Combs, he was apparently on his knees praying. He had given a prayer gesture to the jury after they had delivered their verdict, and he was on his knees praying whilst he was sitting in the court. Now, we were talking to David Arenberg, former state attorney for Palm Beach County in Florida, just a few moments ago, and he was saying it's entirely possible that Sean Diddy Combs could get released as early as this afternoon. He has been held on remand for quite a while. It is a custodial sentence potentially of as little as 2 years, as many as 20 years possibly that he could serve. But whilst the judge considers that, his passport has been surrendered, and his defence team have asked if he can be released on bail. So the judge is going to consider that. He has adjourned the court while he considers that, and he has asked both the defence and prosecution to come back to him to give their thoughts about sentencing at 1 p.m. New York time, which is 6 p.m. UK time. So there will certainly be more activity at the court then. We don't know whether the family are just going to sort of remain there in that vehicle outside the court, whether they've maybe just gone there to shelter from the media glare, or whether that vehicle is going to move away and that they're going to maybe return to the court in a couple of hours' time at 6 p.m. our time. But there is an enormous media scrum outside the court in New York. And as Martha was saying, you know, there is the mainstream media, as they are called. You can see lots of the gazebos in the background of the shot there, where those media are sheltering, but also so many bloggers, so many entertainment correspondents, or whether that vehicle is going to move away and that they're going to maybe return to the court in a couple of hours' time at 6 p.m. our time. But there is an enormous media scrum outside the court in New York. And as Martha was saying, you know, there is the mainstream media, as they are called. You can see lots of the gazebos in the background of the shot there, where those media are sheltering, but also so many bloggers, so many entertainment correspondents down there, so many influencers down there, all giving their take on what is happening. It is 4 o'clock. You're watching Sky News. If you are just joining us, the breaking news this hour is that Sean Diddy Combs has been found guilty of 2 charges of transportation to engage in prostitution at a court in New York, but he has been found not guilty of the more serious charges of racketing and conspiracy and sex trafficking that he was facing. Our correspondent Martha Kellner is down there. She's in that media scrum at the front of the court. Martha, pretty chaotic scenes. We've just seen the family come out, and they're now just sitting in that black vehicle just outside the court.
I know.
Yeah, the family now just pulling away from this courthouse inside that big black people carrier with blacked out windows. 6 of 7 of Sean Combs' children. The 7th is just a toddler, and in fact the mother of that youngest child was also in court. She's called Dana Tran. She was part of the celebrations that this family had as the verdicts were read out. Our colleagues who were inside the court at that point said that the jury was stony-faced as those verdicts were being read out, not really looking over at Combs, but he nodded towards them as the judge thanked them. He was holding the hand, Sean Combs, of Taney Garagos, who was one of the lead defence lawyers, as that verdict was read out. The judge asked Sean Combs if he didn't want to go back to the Metropolitan Detention Centre. That's the prison in Brooklyn where he spent the last 10 months of his life. Sean Combs vigorously shook his head at that. I think it's very clear that he wants to walk away from this courthouse today, even if it means that he spends a portion of time under house arrest. But yeah, as you were saying, it is utter chaos outside this courthouse. There are some members of Sean Combs's family and entourage inside this blacked out people carrier. I'm not entirely sure who is in there. There's a collection of relatives, his children, but also his mother, Janice, bodyguards as well. He has a documentary crew that's been following every move of the family during the past 7 weeks as well. They're inside these two vans. You can see it pulling away. But yeah, you know, a collection, an assortment of various people outside this court, the conventional mainstream media, if you like, but then dozens and dozens of members of the general public, of influencers too, who have been live streaming throughout this case. You know, I've covered a lot of celebrity court trials, the trial of R. Kelly, the trial of Donald Trump and of Ghislaine Maxwell. But this is by far the most chaotic scene I've seen outside a courthouse. There is really no order to things here. And just imagine what it will be like if Sean Combs does indeed walk away from this courthouse this afternoon. The judge, of course, awaiting those applications about sentencing from both the prosecution, the government's team of attorneys, and from his own defence attorneys.
Martha, for people who are just tuning our way, remind us of the key moments of this trial.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been a fascinating trial throughout. You know, 7 weeks. The evidence portion of this trial has taken really two key star witnesses. Cassandra Ventura, who gave evidence about what she said was a huge power and wealth imbalance in the more than a decade-long relationship that she had with him. She detailed there's people getting into a dispute outside court here. That's what you're seeing on your screen about this verdict. You know, people feel very passionately about this case. Clearly, some on the side of Sean Combs, some on the side of the women who gave evidence in this case. So, as I was saying, the two key star witnesses, Cassie Ventura, who gave evidence while almost 9 months pregnant. I found her testimony very affecting. She spoke about being beaten regularly by Sean Combs during their relationship. She said that she lived in fear of him, not only physical fear of him, but she said she feared that he would release videos that he had filmed of these so-called freak-offs. These are the sex marathons, the drug-fueled sex sessions where she says she was forced to have sex with male prostitutes. Those were on camera, and she says that Sean Combs lauded those films over her, that she felt that if she didn't continue to go along with his every wish and desire, that he would release those videos to humiliate her. That was part of the prosecution's case, that Sean Combs blackmailed her, the sex trafficking charges that spoke to. Well, this jury didn't believe the prosecution case because they found him not guilty in the sex trafficking of Cassie Ventura, but also of Jane, the woman who testified under the pseudonym Jane. Sean Combs was in a relationship with her up until very recently. In fact, he was still in a relationship with her when Cassie Ventura filed her civil lawsuit against Combs. And Jane actually said to Sean Diddy Combs that reading through that lawsuit that Cassie Ventura had filed was like reading, in her words, her own sexual trauma. But it seems like this jury, in terms of what they've decided, the verdicts that they've handed down, they have sided with Sean Combs over these two women, the two key star witnesses.
And Martha, in the last few moments, we've heard from one of the prosecution lawyers, that's Douglas Wigdor. He's been speaking in the last few minutes. Let's just listen to him.
Reaction to what happened? The reaction is that we're pleased that he's finally been held responsible for two federal crimes, something that he's never faced in his life. He still faces substantial jail time. Of course, we would have liked to have seen a conviction on the sex crimes in RICO, but we understand beyond a reasonable doubt is a high standard, and we're just pleased that that he still faces substantial jail time. All right, thank you. Thank you very much.
How much time?
Doug Wigdor, W-I-G-D-O-R. Well, each is faces up to 10 years on each. I'm not sure what the sentencing guidelines are given the various different things, but I'll leave that up to the government and the defense to argue. But I feel confident in saying he still faces substantial incarceration.
How will you feel if he walks out on bail?
Well, that's up to the judge. I don't have a personal vested interest in this case. Whatever the appropriate thing to do under the law is what should be done. And at the end of the day, he needs to be sentenced pursuant to the guidelines and pursuant to what the law is. My understanding of that is that he faces significant incarceration. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, Martha, the prosecution lawyer there obviously favoured.
Surprising that he was acquitted on the two most egregious charges.
When you heard there was a split verdict yesterday, what were your thoughts? I mean, what did you expect to hear today?
I expected to hear that there was going to be a guilty on one of the sex trafficking charges, which as it related to Cassie, because the jury was asking questions on the racketeering charge about the underlying predicate crimes that could have been committed. So I thought they must believe that there was some crime committed here and possibly the sex trafficking crime. But as we saw very quickly this morning, the jury came back and said, no, the prosecution did not prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he committed those two harshest charges.
So, Michelle, you were surprised when you heard the verdicts.
I was surprised because I expected, particularly with Cassie, because as we know, the video doesn't lie. We watched it, the jury watched the video where at the Intercontinental Hotel where Diddy dragged and kicked and physically abused and assaulted Cassie, where she was trying to escape one of the freak-offs. That lends itself to this sex trafficking charge where these women were forced to participate by coercion or force. That's the definition of sex trafficking. So that was a surprise, not in relation to Jane, but certainly in relation to Cassie.
Now, when it comes to the verdicts and those guilty verdicts on transportation,
was a surprise, not in relation to Jane, but certainly in relation to Cassie.
Now, when it comes to the verdicts and those guilty verdicts on transportation,
was a surprise, not in relation to Jane, but certainly in relation to Cassie.
Now, when it comes to the verdicts and those guilty verdicts on transportation to move sex workers, we hear about the sentence 0 to 10 years. I mean, he could face up to 20 years in prison on the invitation to move sex workers. We hear about the sentence 0 to 10 years. I mean, he could face up to 20 years in prison on these. Do you expect we will see him even serve jail time?
You know, certainly the defense is arguing for leniency. They're going to argue that he walk away today, certainly be released on bond to await sentencing. And then at the sentencing itself, the court has a decision whether to run the sentences concurrently or consecutively. But in this case, he doesn't have to serve any time at all. So I think it remains to be seen that they're going to weigh whether he's a threat to society, a threat to others, or a harm to others, whether he needs to be committed to a penitentiary for a period of time. But the court has wide discretion, as you mentioned, to order no time up to 10 years per crime.
And Michelle, let's talk about how double jeopardy plays with this case.
Well, there is no double jeopardy.
Meaning, right.
Here that he charged.
Okay.
He can't be charged again for any of the crimes because he was acquitted on the racketeering charge and he was acquitted on the two sex trafficking charges.
All right. Thank you so much, Michelle Thomas, trial attorney. Now let's go back to Jennifer Bisram, who is outside the courthouse with Alice Gaynor. Jennifer?
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Something that should have been told to me before I even came outside, but whatever.
Hi there, guys. Sorry, we lost you for a second. Hi there, Mary. If you can see behind us right now, there is a lot of commotion happening outside of the courthouse. It's still unclear what's being said.
There's two men that have been arguing back and forth. There's a huge crowd surrounding them. We don't know what the dispute is. It doesn't appear to be violent, but I mean, there's just huge crowds outside of here.
I think they're chanting, "Let Puffy go." Mary, not sure if you guys could hear us.
Yes, arguing back and forth. There's a huge crowd. Even came outside, but whatever.
On the 2 sex trafficking charges.
All right. Thank you so much, Michelle Thomas, trial attorney. Now let's go back to Jennifer Bisram, who is outside the courthouse with Alice Gaynor. Jennifer?
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Something that should have been told to me before I even came outside, but whatever.
Hi there, guys. Sorry, we lost you for a second. Hi there, Mary. If you can see behind us right now, there is a lot of commotion happening outside of the courthouse. It's still unclear what's being said.
There's two men that have been arguing back and forth. There's a huge crowd surrounding them. We don't know what the dispute is. It doesn't appear to be violent, but I mean, there's just huge crowds outside of here.
I think they're chanting, "Let Puffy go." Mary, not sure if you guys could hear us.
Yes, we can hear you, and we have been watching what is happening outside the courthouse. We did hear from the attorney of Cassie Ventura a short time ago saying that he spoke with Cassie and that she was in a good place, as he had said. We are still awaiting the attorney for Sean Combs to come out of the courthouse, and that's why we're continuing to see that large crowd also trying to find out whether Sean Diddy Combs will be released today and await that a good place, as he had said. We are still awaiting the attorney for Sean Combs to come out of the courthouse, and that's why we're continuing to see that large crowd also trying to find out whether Sean Diddy Combs will be released today and await that sentencing. Again, we've been talking about those 2 counts, 0 to 10 years, maximum 10 years on each of them. He could serve them concurrently. He could serve them consecutively. That will be up to the judge. But a huge day in court today as we saw that split verdict for Sean Diddy Combs.
Yeah, and then we could also see him released, today. So it should be interesting. The attorneys that asked for
that will be up to the judge, but a huge day in court today as we saw that split verdict for Sean Diddy Combs.
Yeah, and then we could also see him released, today. So it should be interesting. The attorneys had asked for a few hours to come up with some of the paperwork, so it's going to be a bit of a wait, I think, before we find that out. Let's go back. Do we still have Alice and Jennifer? I had a question for Alice Gaynor.
Earpiece now so I can hear you.
Jennifer, I think you have IFB. Jennifer, can you ask Alice? I mean,
we both have one. We both have it now. Yeah.
All right, Alice, I'm glad you have it now. You have been covering this case from day one, 7 long weeks. What has it been like for you? I mean, this has been an emotional roller coaster, I think, for everybody keeping a close eye on the case.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much going on, and there's such huge interest in this case. It's like nothing I've ever seen before, actually. I get asked so many questions. People on social media are so interested. They are following me now to try and see our daily updates we've been posting on Instagram. So that's new for us because certainly we've covered high-profile trials before, but I mean, you could probably see behind me, I've never seen crowds of this magnitude throughout the trial, not just at openings or closing and verdict day. I mean, there's been a steady stream of people here curious about it. Like I said before, streaming about it, giving their own personal takes on what's been going on. They had to set up multiple overflow rooms at one point just to make sure they could meet the demand, because not everyone can get into the main courtroom. So they have these overflow rooms set up with a feed of what's going on in the main courtroom that people can then watch themselves. And so that's just been interesting for me, just to see how many people have really cared about this case. And so, as you mentioned, it's been nearly 2 months here at this courthouse. Journalists from all over the world covering this. People gathered here from, all over the area. You can't even see behind us just how many people are here for this case.
Alice, I wanted to ask you, you described the cheers after all of the verdicts were read, but as those first were being read, did you get a sense, or did you have a clear view of Sean Combs or his family, and what was their facial reactions when they heard not guilty?
So Sean Combs pumped his fists at one point when they said that first, not guilty, when the jury foreperson, that's juror number 5, was the one who was reading the verdict. Sean Combs pumped his fists at one point when they said that first, not guilty, when the jury foreperson, that's juror number 5, was the one who was reading the verdict.
Of Sean Combs or his family, and what was their facial reactions when they heard not guilty?
So Sean Combs pumped his fists at one point when they said that first, not guilty, when the jury foreperson, that's juror number 5, was the one who was reading the verdict. He pumped his fists. I had to write down the verdict really quick, so I couldn't keep a close eye on the faces of his family and of Combs himself, but I just know after the verdict was read and once everyone, the judge and the jury, left the courtroom, man, the applause was thunderous from his family, because you had his 3 daughters, you had his sons, his mother, other family and friends and supporters who were in the courtroom for him today. They were just cheering. He was clapping. And it's such an interesting visual because, again, he's by the defense table. It's not like he can run up and hug them. He's not a free man. He was convicted of 2 of the 5 counts. And what we're doing, as you mentioned right now, is we're awaiting the judge and the attorneys to gather back in the courthouse this afternoon. Both sides are preparing letters right now. The defense is going to be arguing for why they think he should walk out of this courthouse back in the courthouse this afternoon. Both sides are preparing letters right now. The defense is going to be arguing for why they think he should walk out of this courthouse today. The government, prosecutors, they say, no, we want him detained before he is officially sentenced. So that's going to happen later this afternoon. So therefore, all these crowds are going to be here all day, wondering, waiting to see, will Sean Combs walk out of this courthouse, or will he be transported right back to the MDC, which is where he has been detained since his arrest. Oh, and I do want to point out what's interesting is they had argued for bail numerous times before the trial started, and it was denied every single time. So again, he's been detained. Oh, and I do want to point out what's interesting is they had argued for bail numerous times before the trial started, and it was denied every single time. So again, he's been detained
and they've
since he was
surrendered his
arrested.
passport, and they talked about that there was no means for him to go anywhere. Even an ankle monitor, they were even saying at one point, right before that.
That's right. And the defense is going to be laying out some very strict guidelines, hoping that the judge will agree with them. They only want him to be permitted to travel between his homes in Miami, LA, New York, nowhere else, like you mentioned, Jennifer, surrendering his passport, that sort of thing. So we'll see what these letters, these arguments say, and what the judge ultimately decides sometime this afternoon. The government said they needed a few hours to prepare their letter.
So there is a possibility that Sean Diddy Combs, if the judge allows it, could walk out of here?
I guess we will have to
50,
see.
50. We still don't know for sure.
We don't know for sure, but we'll see. I mean, and it wouldn't be an immediate thing because, as the defense pointed out, there's procedures he has to go through with the marshals should he be granted, release on bond. But we'll see.
Alice Gaynor, Jennifer Bisram, thank you. And keep it here for continuing coverage on this case and today's verdict. Again, Sean Diddy Combs has been found guilty on counts 3 and 5, the lesser charges.
And we're going to have the very latest today at noon.
The defense has a strong argument Given this outcome, I know prosecutors are going to put together something relating to that threat to society. We're probably going to hear about violence. It's been conceded. We know that he said, the defense had conceded that there was violence in these relationships and drugs. We also know, and this is what I would expect to see, and this was not part of the case, Laura, and I always found this interesting, that when his homes were raided, when there were searches done of Combs' homes, there were guns that were taken by law enforcement. They did not make it into this trial.
And guns were not part of the racketeering.
Not a part of it. No, we all thought it was going to be.
And they had scratched off serial numbers,
which is a serious, serious crime to have those scratched off serial numbers. I expect the prosecution to hearken back to that. Now, the defense may have some counter arguments because I got to tell you, there's a reason why they weren't in this trial, right? There's a reason why that was precluded. If prosecutors could have gotten that in, I suspect they would have. So the defense likely has an argument, but I would expect to see some of that come into what prosecutors argue today in that 1 p.m. submission.
Well, we are certainly going to see it at 1 p.m. Misty, thank you for your time and expertise. Just to recap here for people joining us, Sean Diddy Combs, the music mogul, has in fact been convicted on 2 of the 5 criminal counts he was facing in this trial. A federal jury. Thank you for your time and expertise. Just to recap here for people joining us, Sean Diddy Combs, the music mogul, has in fact been convicted on 2 of the 5 criminal counts he was facing in this trial. Thank you for your time and expertise. Just to recap here for people joining us, Sean Diddy Combs, the music mogul, has in fact been convicted on 2 of the 5 criminal counts he was facing in this trial. A federal jury finding him guilty on 2 counts of transportation to engage in prosecution, but not guilty, acquitted on the more serious charges related to sex trafficking and racketeering. The court has adjourned for the morning as the judge considers whether Combs can be released from custody. We're going to have much more ahead, but for now, that concludes this NBC News special report. We'll have more ahead on NBC News.
The NBC